Currently, what I do is I have an orchard manager that I give him the responsibility of both finding the people that work for us, making sure that the jobs that he and I work together on, how they need to be done, and then I let him do it. I don't try to micromanage. I feel that if I don't micromanage, then the people that work for me tend to take more responsibility, but also ownership, and they have more a feeling of how the end result is than if I tell them all the time exactly what I want them to do. I don't have the time, I don't have the personality, I don't have the desire to follow somebody around and critique them all the time. And so he pretty much takes care of the labor end of it, and I pretty much take care of the end where I make sure he has everything he needs, and do the financing, and I do the work with the banks and all that, and I try to make his job as easy as possible, because the more efficient he is, the better off the company is as a company.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. How has your current method changed from the year past, if any?
In how we've managed?
Yeah.
We've added a number of leases where before we just operated our own farm, and then over the years we started picking up some leases from other people that had either given up on farming or had decided that they didn't want to do it anymore because of financial reasons or health or one thing or another. And so as that has spread, then I've had to both trust the employees more because we're spread out more. Plus we've had to figure out how to make things efficient in both how we move equipment, move people, all of those kind of things. Before it was pretty simple. Now there are a lot more factors involved.
What type of fertilizer do you use, and why do you use it?
Basically what we use is calcium nitrate. We have used some urea in the past, we've used some ammonium nitrate in the past, but what happens is with calcium nitrate, with our soils, it seems to be the best fit because it doesn't alter the pH of the soil, which affects the way the apples grow and the trees grow and everything else. If years that we've used ammonium nitrate, then we've had to come back in with lime to balance the pH again, to get it in the right area for apples. It's different for apples than it is for cherries, than it is for pears, for other things. But the other thing that we do is where we soil test all the time before we apply a fertilizer. There are places where we don't need to fertilize. Other places we need to put on basically just a maintenance amount. It's been years since we've had to alter the amount that we put on, but every year we decide places that we are going to apply or not apply. Typically, if places where we have Golden Delicious, we don't even apply fertilizer anymore. They make the trees grow too much and the apples stay too green too long. And so those are things partly you learn with time, partly field men help you with and that. But.
What does the calcium nitrate mostly consist of?
Calcium and nitrogen. And then the combination of how they formulate it so that it breaks down in the soil and everything else. And they're nutrients that the trees need and the apples need.
In recent years, how has that fertilizer improved the growth of the orchard?
Like I was saying, with the soil test, we know how much to put in. Part of the problem with an orchard is you need the trees to fill the space that they're planted in, but you don't want them to get too big. You know, there's no reason to grow a tree just to make it vigorous and get big and everything else. If you planted them to fill a 5-foot space, excuse me, you don't want to fertilize it to the point that it's 6 or 7 or 8 feet, because then they start crowding each other, and more of the vigor goes into growing the tree than to producing fruit. And the end result that you want is the fruit production. But you've got to fertilize more when they're young to get them to fill that space. But once they fill that space, you tend to cut back.
Okay.
How does the different climate changes affect your crops?
The cold weather affects it. It can be in the spring. You've got your blossom time. You can stand different temperatures at different stages of the apple, and you know, early on you can stand in the 20s at night, or you know, in the cold times, whether it's night or day. But as the flower gets closer and closer to blooming, that temperature goes up, and then you get to where the blossom comes out. If you get below 32 degrees or freezing, that apple can become deformed, or even the bud can die because of the frost, because of the cold. So that's where you come in, and in the old days people used to use a lot of smudge pots just to generally heat the orchard. Nowadays that happens with wind machines, where you're trying to mix the warmer air that's above with the colder air down below, or with water. And when you put water on, you have some effect of just the temperature of the water is warmer than the air. But also when the water freezes, like over buds, I don't know if you've seen where trees have been completely covered with like overhead sprinklers. Sometimes people will do that, and the whole tree will be iced. That's not a bad thing, because what happens is when water freezes, it creates energy, and energy is heat. Okay, so when you cover those things, the water, as it freezes, keeps the bud or the blossom at 32 degrees, which is not going to damage it. But if you turn the water off, then the freezing stops. You know, it has to keep freezing, keep doing that to generate the heat. So if you turn the water off too early, before the ice starts melting without just the water on it, then you damage the buds themselves too. Okay, so if you use water, you have to keep using water, and until it starts to thaw. In the fall, if you get cold weather and the apples freeze, depending on the variety, the apples will survive a mild freeze, where the apples will get actually icy. But you can't do that for too long or too many times, or the apple just breaks down. And so those are the problems with the cold. The sun and the heat also create big problems. They'll sunburn the apples. The internal part of the apple will break down. You know, heat is great for growing the tree, but it's bad for the fruit on it. And so there are a lot of things we do to try to protect the apples from the heat. Some more successful than others, but so weather is a huge thing, because you really don't have any control over it. You're just trying to fight what's there and hopefully get the best result.
How have the fertilizers you used in past years compared to the fertilizer you use now?
We typically have used calcium nitrate because of the pH issue. We've used ammonium nitrate in the past because it's cheaper. but then you have to go back in with lime and readjust your pH, and that can be a mess in itself. But with the soil samples, in the old days, you used to just go through, you knew you had to fertilize a certain time of year, you just went in, you fertilized and put on the same amount every year. Now, we do a lot more soil sampling, so you know how much is in the soil, because some trees take up more than others, and some trees, like I said with Golden Delicious, once they fill their space, a lot of people don't ever fertilize those again.
All right, how long have you been in the business?
I came back and started, well, I grew up on the family farm. And so I've been in the business since I was 5 or 6, just because we would always go out in the orchard and we would be asked to rake brush, or we would do stuff with our family to help do that. And so I've worked on the family farm all my life. But as far as coming back and actually being a decision maker in the business, that didn't happen until probably 1980.
Okay.
Have you seen an increase or decrease of animals around your crops?
Yes, and it's different animals. In the old days, we used to have pheasant, but those were usually planted by the game department in a field next to us. But we would see those a lot more. With weed sprays, you eliminate a lot of those places where they hide in the orchard, but we still get all kinds of quail, all kinds of ducks, geese, deer. Sometimes we get more animals than we really want, and the deer can do a lot of damage to an orchard. Ducks and geese, not so much. But as far as and I don't know if it's because I notice them more, but they're sparrowhawks a lot more now than I ever remember. There are a lot of different bird species that we have now that I don't remember noticing as a kid that were probably there.
Is the business of growing crops more or less popular now, and why?
What was the first part?
Is the business of growing crops more or less popular, and why?
Popular?
Yeah.
It's less popular in that fewer people are doing it. Big corporate farms are taking over apples, just like they took over hog production, just like they took over all kinds of other things. So family farms are disappearing. And I used to go to hort meetings in Manson and Chelan, where the rooms would be full of neighbors. And like I said before, we have a number of leases of people that have given up on farming. And so I have, it's like 12 or 13 different orchards that other people used to farm themselves that they have me doing now. And so it's, there are a lot fewer of us even in this valley doing it than there used to be. But corporate farming is part of the problem. Regulations are part of the problem, because the government regulations that are required that have nothing to do with food safety or worker safety or anything else are so expensive that it drives most small farms out of business.
All right, how is your fertilizer dispersed? Do you spray it, or?
In the old days, we used to do it by hand. Would load up a trailer with bags of fertilizer, and one person would be on opening the bags, and 2 people would walk beside the trailer and throw it out by hand, around the roots. Now we do it with a machine that's calibrated so that we get the exact amount per acre that we want. And it just throws it around